we're going to just literally do a quick hello with them, because I can see that Mr. Tinyo has joined the party this morning too. Now, don't worry, you're not going to just be stuck with me. James is getting ready too, so he should be out in a moment. Look at that lion. Actually seems to be enjoying this cooler weather. I suppose especially when you have a large belly like that. You'd prefer to have the cooler weather, the rain on your skin, rather than the sweltering heat. Now, I'm going to go forward because they are feeding on the carcass. Let's say hello to whoever's eating. Now, this is a live safari in case you've stumbled across us or you've just tuned in for the first time. Perhaps you heard about it from a friend. And we'd love to hear from you, so you're welcome to interact with us and send us questions. You can either do that by hashtagging Safari Live, or you can send us an email at questions@WildEarthTV. Now, I'm just trying to find the best spot. I'm going to poke my nose in over here. And we're just obviously adjusting a couple of things, and it is very difficult to do adjustments when you've got all that plastic covering the camera. Hey, Brian. Little bit difficult, but we'll make it work. And now, ooh, we're looking at Mr. Tinyo. You can see he's not very happy with that cub feeding in between his legs. And I don't know how that cub can fit anything more into its stomach. It is so full. And I presume that the rest of the pride is just laying off in the drainage line to keep out of this miserable weather. Going to tell Lex that we're here. Lex for Taylor. Lex just relocated. Just come straight Twin Dams, Wahlbergs Road. You'll get my visual. Orbs, is that you? Or is it Taxon? You're more than welcome to. You'll be number 2, and then Lex will be making his approach. Mobiles we've relocated on the Nkuhuma Pride, as well as 2 Birmingham boys. We just the same lock as yesterday, Wahlbergs, Twin Dams Junction. There we go. Now I've sorted it out. It seems as though everybody had the same idea as us this morning, to head out after the rain sort of settled down a bit. And I'm glad we got here first, because there's a very limited view of this carcass. So perhaps Tinyo was around last night. Maybe he was just hiding away. And well, you can see that that cub is not impressed that it has had to give up its spot at the carcass. Another little one about to try its luck. No, and he's just going to move it away from them completely. It's very selfish. Look at the strength that he's able to turn that buffalo over like that. Isn't that amazing? With so much ease. And now I think, though, we will exhibit the typical feeding behavior of males over the carcass, especially Tinyo. He's not as tolerant of the cubs and the females, well, as Mr. Mfumo is. But you can see that little cub. It's about triple the size of what they were yesterday. Look at that belly. It's almost touching the ground. Being very cautious around Tinyo. You see that sort of slinking behavior that they're doing, ducking their heads down, showing that they're being submissive. You better tread lightly. I'm sure you can hear all the birds waking up as well. Yes, be careful, little one. And you can see he really doesn't care that the cubs are around. If they're in the way, well, they're going to get stood on. And well, it seems as though he's so focused on feeding on that carcass, he's just going to use the luxuries right there. That's not rain, everyone. Now it would be quite interesting to see if Tinyo does act quite aggressively towards his cubs, what Nkuhuma will do. Just because of the interesting behavior we watched yesterday, how he greeted every single female that was around and made a concerted effort to strengthen the bond between the members of the pride. Now I wonder, I don't know if he would stand up to Tinyo, because he seems to quite enjoy the cubs. And we saw it yesterday, how excited those cubs were to see Nkuhuma. They came darting over to say hello. Now, Michael, as we're sitting here, you've commented on the way that Tinyo is growling, and you're wondering if he is growling at Nkuhuma or if he's growling at the cubs. Now, Nkuhuma doesn't seem to be bothering him at the moment. He's really just sitting, observing, listening. I think it's when the cubs get too close to him. Let's see, let's watch. They'll get under his legs, they get in the way, and of course then they want to feed on the best spot too. He just sort of bulldozes them out the way though. But I suspect if Nkuhuma does get up, that there will be some tension, as they seem to have eaten. Oh, look at this, Nkuhuma giving him a stare. But look at this. Even though they may fight over carcasses, that was actually a very nice interaction that you saw there, very brief. Looked over, almost went to nudge heads. And perhaps Nkuhuma has been bossed around this morning by Tinyo. And now he's had his chance to come in. But look how more tolerant he is around the cubs. He's very relaxed. Ooh, already fighting with one of the females. You can see Nkuhuma, he doesn't really step on top of the cubs and knock them down. Did you see how he walked around? There's just little things like that that makes me think that he's just got the most incredible genetics and personality, this lion. So calm, very placid, but stern and strong like a male lion should be when he needs to. He's also having a growl at the cubs now. But I don't blame him. Those little ones are now trying to feast where he's got his paws, and he seems to want to turn the buffalo over again. Wonderful. Well, it seems as though James has got Wendy up and running now, so well done to David and James. But let's go across to them so they can officially say hello to you. Now we're still sitting here with these beautiful Nkuhumas that wouldn't dare move. And while it was relatively peaceful at the carcass, Nkuhuma has found a spot where he can feed in peace, and the two little cubs are on the other side now. It's showing a little bit of tension towards each other. They have devoured this carcass overnight. But I suppose that was expected after seeing them last night, not looking too full. See how he's trying to now separate the skin from the flesh? How he's tearing into it. Now, of course, some of you may not find this very pleasant, and it can be, of course, a little bit gruesome. So you're more than welcome to go and make yourself a cup of tea or anything along those lines. Perhaps go put the washing out or do some ironing, whatever it may be. We're going to sit here for a little bit longer and watch them feast, as it's important that these little cubs keep feeding, because we know that they've got a little bit of mange and we need them to push through that. Now, looking at this carcass and with my comment saying that they've completely devoured it, Carrie, you were wondering how much is left. Not much, and I think we're going to see, like we saw Tinyo doing, Nkuhuma trying to turn it over. and try and find a spot where there is some flesh. I suspect by this afternoon, I don't think there will be anything left. You see, look how gentle he is. Even though he's growling. There we go, reprimanding a cub for not listening to his authority. And we know how cheeky these cubs are. So they do deserve a bit of reprimanding every now and then. But still not as aggressive as Nat.Geo is. He, like we just saw him walk over, bulldozer the cubs over. Well, they're quite resilient as well. That's something you must remember, is that these little chaps are tough creatures. And they are able, of course, to handle the odd swat or being stepped on or falling out of trees. They sort of just bounce back again. Now, we really only have been seeing Nat.Geo and Nkuhuma over the last couple of weeks. And towards the end of, I think it was September, we started seeing Nana as well. But I've never seen Blondie. And I know, Roger, you were wondering where Nana and Nsuku have disappeared to. And you're wondering if there's a split in the Birminghams. Now, I don't think that there's necessarily a split. I think that they've separated slightly, not on a permanent basis. I'm sure when they go out and do their territorial patrols, they of course will meet up again and greet each other. And I think this way, it seems as though Nat.Geo and Nkuhuma seem to handle the western sector, and Nsuku and Nana cover the more eastern sector. So it's actually quite an efficient way to run a property and to run their territory. Instead of all staying in one place at the same time, make their presence known by splitting up separately. And of course, one line on their own is not a good idea, so they seem to have gone into pairs, which is actually very clever. It's a very clever strategy. It always amazes me how the cubs get the dirtiest too. From the mud, from the carcass. Well, something that we've also been chatting about over the last couple of weeks is the Birmingham's manes, how lovely they are becoming. And it seems as though Nat.Geo's mane seems to be getting nice and dark quite quickly. In Nkuhuma's mane, you can just see that black patch coming out now. Now, Charlie, you were wondering why male lions have manes and females don't. Now, it's very important for these males, firstly, the most important thing, is that it protects the vital organs. So that mane is really, really thick, and it goes around and covers the throat. It also covers around the chest and on the back of the neck, which are very vulnerable areas. When we watch lions take down animals, those are the areas they go for first, the throat and, of course, the spine or the back of the neck if it's a small prey. So when they fight, they're protecting those vital organs. But it's also, of course, like we see with birds, the male birds having beautiful voices or beautiful colored feathers, they need a way to also attract the females. And that big mane, well, the darker it is, they say, the more females the male lion is likely to get. And I actually remember there was a documentary that was done many years ago. It must have been about 13 years ago, where I forget who did it. They built robotic lions. Well, no, maybe not even robotic. I think they were just sort of figures. And they, I don't know, covered them in a lion scent, but one had a dark mane and one had a blonde mane. And they put them relatively close to each other, and they set up a camera, and they watched the interaction as lionesses came through that area. And all of those lionesses first went up to the male. There was no difference in body size either. They went up to the male with a darker mane and rubbed heads. And I thought that was quite interesting, a very interesting study. Afterwards, they realized that they obviously weren't real and there was something fishy, and they moved off. But they did the same greeting, rubbing heads and saying hello to each other. But you can see now there's really not much flesh at all. It seems as though they've feasted upon all the flesh already. But but we'll try and hang around for a little bit longer. We also need to give a couple of guides a chance to come and have a look. But I believe James has got an animal that's still in its pajamas. Now, I'm just closing my box with all my books and things in. But you can see Nkuhuma has now turned the carcass over once again, which is now actually exposed. And we can see a little bit more flesh. You can see that the one back leg, there's still quite a bit of flesh on it. They've eaten line, so hopefully we're going to get more and more of them come towards the carcass. But for now, it's just these three here, enjoying themselves. And this is just incredible interactions. It is so refreshing to finally see a male that makes a concerted effort to bond with the different members of a pride. Now, Paul, you were wondering if the lions eat the bones. They will if it's a young animal and it's particularly small bones. However, because this buffalo was not quite an adult just yet, almost there, it's a bit tough, and their teeth aren't designed to crush the bones. They've really got that carnassial shear, which allows them to sort of scissor and pull the meat off of it. So that's where something like a hyena will come into play, where they are specialist feeders and their jaws are designed to crush bone between their back molars. And what they're feasting on is not actually the actual bone itself, but the bone marrow inside, which is filled with an incredibly large amount of nutrients. But in the process of crushing that bone, they will obviously digest a couple of pieces, but their digestive systems are incredible. Their stomach acids are much stronger than that of a lion's. That allows them to digest shards of bone up to about 7 centimeters or so. Little ones, I don't know how much more you can fit in those bellies. You're going to have to roll back over to the other lions. Now the wind has actually just picked up and started gusting. So I'm wondering if these lions, some of these lions aren't going to get up and move into the drainage line, because it's starting to get very unpleasant out here now. But luckily for us, it's just a little drizzle, so it's not too bad. Oh, do you know where those little ones are hiding, Brian? They're hiding under that fallen tree. You see it right in there? They're on top of it. We can see a couple of the Nkuhumas on top of the tree, but I found their hiding spot. They're actually just sitting below where that one is standing. Quite difficult to see them with the leaves, but they are indeed hiding under there. You can see a bit of movement. Now, talking monkey, you were wondering... Oh, what were you wondering? Sorry, that one completely slipped my mind. I had it in my head, and then, well, it just disappeared. Do you remember what Talking Monkey said? Well, we'll ask Louise. No comment from Louise, apparently. Okay, we'll get back to your question now, Talking Monkey. Sorry, I apologize. Oh, there we go. That was a nice chunk of flesh. There we go. Sorry, I knew it was something like that. Sorry, Talking Monkey, I apologize. And you were wondering if lions smell like wet dog. Not quite wet dog. It's a strange smell. Now, in my opinion, I don't think I've never really been able to pick up the lion smell. The only time I've ever smelt them is when they were feeding on a rotting carcass. This was a couple of years ago. They then stank like rotting carcass. But otherwise, I don't think they smell unpleasant. I think out of the cats, lions are particularly clean. Except when the males start the courtship process and start mating with the females, then they forget about everything. But we constantly see these lions grooming themselves for quite a number of hours every single day. It's a big part of their lives. And of course we know these little ones, well, they go to mom to get cleaned when they dive inside the carcass, like this one seems to be doing now. Not afraid of getting dirty. So I don't think they particularly smell. Maybe James has got another opinion. Brian, do you think that lions smell?
A little bit.
What do they smell like to you?
I can't even describe it. But they've got a certain stench to them.
So Brian says that they do have a certain stench to them, but he says it's very difficult to try and describe it to anything that's sort of familiar. He says it's unique. But animals that are quite stinky are the wild dogs. They're my absolute worst. That smell, it smells like sweet, stinky socks with blue cheese inside of them that have been sitting in the sun for about 2 weeks. It's horrible. And I also don't like the smell of wildebeest. It smells like off butter that has also been sitting in the sun. Those are smells that make my stomach not feel so wonderful. Though I must admit I'd rather smell those two species of animals than that buffalo that's just near Buffelshoek. That is getting quite unpleasant. Now, Leopold, as we were looking at these very dirty lions, you've asked if they will groom themselves. They do indeed. Like I said, they spend quite a large amount of their time actually grooming themselves. These little ones have learned how to lick, and they lick each other, and that's the most effective way to remove dirt. As they've got hard bristles on their tongue that almost combs through their hair too, and will remove stubborn ticks, and if there's any bits of vegetation or mud stuck on them, they'll get rid of it like that. And then of course the adults though help out quite a bit, but I do find that the lionesses seem to be a lot cleaner than the boys. The males are always a little bit scruffy. But I can't believe the difference in these Birminghams in just a couple of weeks. Their size and body, the color of their coat, not just their mane, but even their hair on their body now is starting to go a little bit darker. They're actually turning into lovely boys. I'm excited to eventually see Nsuku. Now, it seems as though nobody else wants to come and see the lion, so we're going to stay with him for as long as we can. And let's go across to James and see how he's coping. And well, I hope that his hair is not getting wet in the weather. Now, Mr. Mfumo has moved off completely from the carcass. He's saying hello to some of the lionesses. And it's amazing how it seems as though they've actually just worked out on a system where everybody can be happy here. The lionesses first started feeding earlier in the evening yesterday. And then obviously Tinyo came in and probably barged his way through and demanded a piece of the carcass. I'm obviously only speculating. And well, the cubs don't mind, they just feed whenever. And now that Mfumo's got up, some more lionesses are coming through. They don't look particularly fat like the cubs do and like the males do. I don't know if you can hear in the distance. I was just listening to either Mr. or Mrs. Wahlberg's eagle talking in the distance. Come on, little cub, go inside that cavity. I think you would fit perfectly. No, they really are going to have to turn this carcass around because they've eaten everything on the outside. Now, Brenda, you're asking if I can tell if there's the difference between the sexes of the cubs. Well, this one we're looking at now is a young male. And then you're also saying if the male lions will tolerate the female cubs more over the male cubs at a carcass. I don't think so. I think at this age, They're so young, they're not a threat at all to the males. But we'll see that starting to change as they get older. So once they get to about a year and a half old, we're definitely going to see a change in behavior. And of course, well, the older they get, eventually the Birminghams are going to push those young boys out. But they've got still probably another 2 years or so to go before they even have to worry about that. And for now, they can just rely on the adults for catching food for them. Here's my favorite little girl who's just come out to say hello. She's obviously woken up is not a word, woken up from a sleep. Ooh. And well, there she is, as feisty as always, not taking any nonsense from anybody. Not even a lion that is 10 times her size. Very cheeky. And I think that's why she's my favorite. It's actually just so beautiful listening to the peace and quiet, the odd bird chattering in the distance, the smell of petrichor that James is talking about. And you see that little one is thinking about it. I think that it's realized that there's quite a bit of flesh on the underside. That's all they need to do. They just need to try and turn it over, remove all of the feces that's still sitting in the stomach cavity. And well, then they'll have access to lovely chunks of flesh. Where did Nat.Geo disappear down into the drainage line? Or is he still sitting behind all those trees?
No, he's fine.
Okay, sorry, I'm just trying to see where everybody's moving, and I couldn't see Nat.Geo for a second. There's Nkuhuma, and I think Nat.Geo is sitting at the back behind him, behind all of those trees. I think that's, yes, it looks like his mane. You can just see a little bit of it. Too hairy to be a female. I wonder where the other lionesses are, because I've only actually seen 2 lionesses. And we obviously want this weather to keep up for the entire day. There's a nice soaking rain. Well, we're watching these lions decimate the entire carcass. And Hunter, you've asked, how long will this carcass last these lions? Not very long, I'm afraid. So they took it down yesterday afternoon, probably around 1 o'clock, somewhere around there. And I think it would probably last to about that time this afternoon. Because there's so many of them, they will finish this rather quickly. And there isn't much left. There really is just the one back leg left. And I think that would give them an opportunity to have one last feast. There you go. You can see there's still quite a bit of meat. But then that's it, I'm afraid. And it's like she's making a move around to that corner. Let's see what she does. The cubs don't seem to be too happy. And obviously, no more meat can fit into that stomach, so I'll go and harass my sibling who's sleeping nicely, and perhaps some Nkuhuma too. Oh, there we go. Look at that. Now, that's something you don't often see, is the males participating in grooming, let alone the females, never mind the cubs. That is amazing. This is really the first time I've ever seen interactions like this with a male lion, and I think I was talking about it yesterday afternoon. It's not common. A little cub constantly presenting itself to Nkuhuma, quite happy to be groomed. No, that was very nice. That is amazing. It just shows you the big scary male lions. Well, not all of them behave like that. Some of them are actually quite pleasant. And this will be an experience that I will talk about for years and years and years. Now, we've been chatting about these boys, the young male cubs, about them getting kicked out at about 2.5 years old, somewhere around there. Now, Roger, you were saying what will happen to the female cubs? Who will mate with them when they reach sort of sexual maturity? Now, it will indeed probably be the Birminghams, unless another coalition of males come through and take over. But inbreeding is normal. It's acceptable for a couple of generations. But it's sort of done in a way that it'll maybe only be a year or two. And then by then, the Birminghams would have finished being in the prime of their life and they'd be reaching quite old age. They probably would have battled against a couple of male lions and they'd probably be battered and bruised and tired and weak. And well, then at that time, I'm sure another coalition of males would have come through and taken over the Nkuhuma pride. And then, of course, there's no worries about inbreeding anymore. But we've still got a couple of years away to worry about anything like that. And we'll see. It could be next week that a pride of lions comes down from the Manuleti or from Kruger. We don't know. And that's what's so exciting, is that you can't predict the future. Oh, I can hear thunder rumbling in the distance now. Now, from May, he wanted to know if all 8 cubs make it to adulthood, would they separate if food became scarce and in search of other places? Now, there's a possibility, but I doubt it with the females. It isn't very common. Typically, the females will stay with their maternal pride. However, I've seen it before where 2 young lionesses actually separated and joined up on their own and started forming their own pride. So there's an opportunity to, but I think that these lions will stay together and rule the entire northern section of the Sabi Sand. Because there's quite a few ladies here. I think we've guessed, or we've sort of tried to count, and there's about 5 female cubs and only 3 males, if I'm not mistaken. And that'll take the pride, if they all survive, to 10 lionesses. Now, that is impressive. And, of course, they'll have cubs again. Maybe they have another 5 that survive, and it's quickly going to grow into a super pride. Then we're going to see these lions changing their diet from not just one buffalo, from taking down a number of buffalo at any given time. And hopefully they'll start going for something like giraffe. Because if you've got 10 adult lionesses and a couple of boys hanging around, well then 2 or 3 buffaloes are really not going to last you long at all. We've seen how quickly 5 adult lions, 8 cubs and 2 males can of course decimate this carcass very, very quickly. So giraffe will be the next best thing, or even, which will be very rare and probably unlikely, but there's always a possibility, because if they get to the point where they're 20 lions strong, could go for something like a young elephant bull or a young elephant that's been separated from its herd. But it's not very common here in the Sabi Sand. But it wouldn't surprise me if they start targeting giraffe as soon as this pride grows. Mfumo coming back around again. I do apologize if I shuffle. I've just got pins and needles in my leg. And it's the most uncomfortable feeling in the entire world. it must be Floppy Ear who's fighting like that. Or maybe it's not. Now, if you think that we're seeing action now, wait until they get to about a year old. There's just Lex coming into the sighting. That's why those lions pop their heads up. Okay, what we're going to have to do is, I think we're actually going to have to pull out and give everyone an opportunity. There's a very limited space here, and I'd love for Lex, and there's another guide coming in, I think Andrew. So we'll do a loop and give them an opportunity. Let's go back across to James and see how he's doing, and I'll let you know what we're going to do when we get back.